Hello and welcome to today's webinar, The Power of a Fully Integrated Telematics Program, sponsored by Octo Telematics North America. I'd like to start by introducing today's speakers. First is Steven Fernandez, the Director of Innovation for Octo Telematics. He is responsible for creating new telematics product and service offerings for the North American marketplace, leveraging data and capabilities from across the global Octo Telematics presence. Steven has worked in insurance innovation for over 10 years, identifying and implementing insurance products for major property and casualty insurers, including telematics services. Next, I'll be joined by Cletus Nunes, the Director of Sales at Octo North America. With a strong focus on partnerships, technology, and creative problem solving, Cletus helps companies overcome roadblocks, gain buy-in for innovation, and develop successful connected vehicle go-to-market strategies. He has worked in telematics implementation for over a decade, working with leading insurers on telematics implementation and optimization. Finally, we'll be joined by John Kramer, Octo North America's Director of Customer Success. He oversees program management with Octo's insurance partners and is involved in strategic initiatives to build new partnerships in the United States and Canada. John has worked in the insurance industry for more than a decade in product, pricing, and underwriting functions. We have a great agenda planned for you today. We'll start with a brief overview of insurance telematics. We'll follow that up with a discussion of usage-based insurance. We'll then talk about leveraging telematics for policyholder engagement. And finally, we'll give you the case for telematics in crash and claims. We'll end today's session with a brief question and answer. With that, I'll turn things over to Steven Fernandez.
If we look over the last century, we've known that the auto industry has seen constant innovation. We've seen vehicles improve in their capabilities, become more efficient, get more comfortable, and become safer. In the most recent years, we've seen an explosion of technology in vehicles with the incorporation of infotainment as well as advanced safety features such as collision prevention, lane keeping, blind spot monitoring, etc. However, if we look at the insurance industry during that same period of time, they haven't really innovated a lot. It's only in the last few years that they've begun to embrace new technologies which allow them to become more efficient and effective partners to their policyholders. One area of innovation that has driven significant change in the insurance industry has been the acceptance of telematics amongst insurers of all sizes. So what is telematics? Telematics is the deployment of sensors in vehicles that collect information about the vehicle and its operation and the driver who is operating that vehicle. It allows us to analyze that data and use it to improve the insurance business outcomes. Driver behavior data is great, but to be beneficial, insurance telematics must provide insurers with the intelligence that they need to improve critical outcomes. We've seen insurers really get the most benefits from telematics in the areas of risk modeling, claim cost reduction, and customer acquisition and retention. So why is it important? Because there are more than 7.5 active UBI policies today in the United States. We've already seen over $7.5 billion that have been collected in premiums on these UBI policies. And it's estimated that by 2020, there will be almost 50 million active UBI policies. This is from a study by Telematics. So how will it help the insurance organization? It'll help the organization to improve their risk modeling. It'll help them to improve their claims process and to reduce their claims cost. And it'll help them to improve the way that they acquire customers and retain those customers every renewal period. Oops. I'm trying to move the slide ahead. There we go. So ultimately, it only makes sense to pursue telematics if it makes the auto line more profitable. Throughout this webinar, we're going to explore how telematics improves profitability by identifying how a given telematics-driven activity impacts your auto line loss ratio. If we take you back to Insurance 101, a given insurance line's loss ratio is claims cost divided by premiums. Claims costs are a function of claims frequency and the average cost of claims, inclusive of indirect claims costs. Premiums, similarly, are a function of the number of policies written and the average policy premium. If you have a lower loss ratio, that means you have greater profitability. So with that goal in mind, insurers have two levers to pull: decreasing claim costs or increasing premiums. We'll start with looking at usage-based insurance, or UBI, and how these programs can impact this equation.
Thank you, Stephen. So let's talk and start with usage-based insurance, as this is the most common telematics-driven program in the United States. And if I can get control of the screens, that would be great.
Hold on a second, John. Sorry about that.
No problem. Usage-based insurance programs use technology to collect data so that insurance companies can rate policies based on how, when, where, and how often a vehicle is driven. A recent study showed that 82% of millennials and 78% of all other demographics feel that usage-based insurance is a fair way of rating auto insurance. Most surveyed feel that the traditional proxies, such as credit and age, should have no bearing on rating a person on how they actually drive. Many understand how insurers' risk models may price most drivers accurately, but often force young, safe, and low-mileage drivers to subsidize higher-risk drivers. You can see this in the simple graph on the screen. Many policyholders will be correctly priced using old risk models, represented here as blue squares. Where usage-based insurance policies present a major opportunity are for policyholders in red squares, drivers whose driving behavior indicates they are high risk, but who are currently paying low premiums. They can be guided to appropriate non-usage-based insurance products, while low-risk policyholders who are currently paying high premiums can be offered safe driving discounts and safely retained. Usage-based insurance addresses an unmet need for insurers to have highly predictive data in auto insurance pricing to effectively segment and accurately price policyholders. Effective risk pricing must be the core competency of any insurance company, and telematics data can improve risk pricing significantly. We compared two drivers who were essentially the same on paper in our overly simplified version of an automobile class plan. As you can see, both are male, both are between 30 to 35 years old and married. Both live in the same zip code, have similar vehicles, and are claim-free. To take this one step further, both drivers estimated that they drove approximately 10,000 miles per year and described themselves as above-average drivers. On paper, and thinking about this as a simplified class plan, these two people are essentially the same and, all things being equal, would pay the same premium. However, when driving data was collected, a different story emerged. Across the board, you can see that driver A was less risky than driver B. Take note especially to speeding events, where driver B had 5 times more events than driver A, and annual mileage, where driver B overestimated his annual mileage by nearly 20%, and driver B underestimated his annual mileage by over 120%. Just looking at annual mileage, does it really seem fair and accurate for two drivers who have significantly different risk exposures to pay the same rate? While these two drivers would likely be rated similarly in a traditional auto product, telematics allows insurers to identify divergent behaviors and accurately segment policyholders based on their actual risk. Telematics presents insurers with the opportunity to rate risk more accurately. Telematics-driven usage-based insurance affects both halves of the loss ratio equation. In terms of claims, usage-based insurance policyholders tend to be safer, which result in fewer claims and with considerably lower severity than non-usage-based insurance policyholders. In terms of policy premium, customers in usage-based insurance program tend to retain better when compared to non-usage-based insurance policies. This, in fact, will increase the overall numbers of policies in force. When we look at the top telematics programs that are in market today, nearly all of them are focused solely on pricing and acquisition tactics. Insurers are providing customer pricing with telematics data and providing a discount for policyholders to participate. This, in our opinion, is a short-sighted strategy that is leaving considerable opportunity on the table. With telematics, insurers should continue to offer pricing as these are simple table stakes. With telematics, but that really they need to start to begin placing focus on providing additional value to the customer beyond price, allowing for a more personalized experience where customers can control their rates and create differentiated products to further increase retention to avoid the pitfalls of a notoriously price-sensitive product. So the big question is, what's next for insurers? And the answer to that is value-added services and crash and claims management.
Great. Thank you very much, John. So, value-added services. Here, having trouble as well clicking it. There we go. Okay, good. So, what are we talking about when we mention telematics-driven policyholder services? Services have a wide range from better pricing, as John was talking about, for lower-risk customers, to providing value-added services when your policyholder, or his or her family, is in a moment of need. Real-time information can be transformed into more frequent touch points, adding value around your customer's safety, security, and peace of mind. Remember, safety and security is still the #1 reason why Americans will pay for telematic services from the auto manufacturers. You can see some of the most commonly offered services on this slide, like real-time vehicle and emergency services to location-based services offering rewards and discounts. What is even more exciting is that the new services are being developed every single day to add or address the wants and needs of both drivers and insurers. Services, well, let's talk about the power of a fully integrated telematics program. The services that provide real value help create customer loyalty and significantly affect retention rates in, as John pointed out, a notoriously price-elastic industry. The information we're presenting here, by the way, in the slide comes from Towers Watson's 2015 UBI consumer survey. Some of you may have seen it. The vast majority of consumers, as you can see on here, believe UBI is a fair way to rate auto insurance. Slightly higher for millennials who may be attributed a little bit to their comfort with technology. With 90% of millennials and the majority of non-millennials willing to pay for telematics-driven services, it's clear that your policyholder wants these services. And this presents a major opportunity for insurance carriers. You can see from the ranking of safety and security features on the slide that after 20 years of telematics, consumers still want that connected safety and security. With OEMs, or auto manufacturers, for those not used to the jargon, attempting to monetize their infotainment systems and charging for these services has been a big focus. Insurance carriers, however, are uniquely positioned to improve the insurer-insured relationship by building these services directly into the UBI policy opportunities for free or considerably less than the auto manufacturers would charge. Before we talk about the power of telematics-driven services, again, I have to ask this question. How often do policyholders want to interact with your insurers? Please feel free to throw something in there in the Q&A in terms of your answer to that question. Okay, I'm starting to see some responses. Surprisingly, not many are as positive as we'd like to hope, which demonstrates the need for change. A lack of regular interaction beyond policy renewal period is a major missed opportunity for creating customer loyalty and increased retention. I think many of you may know that and have heard a lot of discussion around that. Taking that into practical matters is quite important. While telematics offers the technical capabilities to collect and analyze data, insurers need to find creative ways to use this data to engage with customers, including some of the items that were shown on the first slide that I presented with the vehicle on it. They would include, helping to improve driving habits, time of need services, things like registration, inspection, smog testing, vehicle maintenance reminders. And I know we've heard a lot about games and leaderboards trying to improve safety, but we also have to add on to that, including rewards, affinity programs. They're very valuable in the customer retention scheme. We're seeing a lot of people working with that across a wide variety of markets. Playing a game as a means to getting something is very reinforcing on the engagement scale. And lastly, we can't forget about the personalization component. Personalized content has been linked to 56% higher responses and engagement rates over traditional communications. Strong engagement with customers has been linked to an average of 23% increased share of wallet, profitability, and revenue. So telematics plays a very powerful role in being able to create a wide scenario and a number of opportunities for insurance carriers to start to address the relationship with their customers. Talking back with our ROI diagram, as you see, it's a common theme throughout our presentation here, and we'll summarize at the end with this. But the impact of value-added services on your loss ratio at first may not be as clear as what John talked about with UBI or crash and claim services, which we'll talk about next, but it is powerful nonetheless. Telematics-driven value-add services focuses on attracting and retaining customers. Therefore, for retention and acquisition, we can expect an increase in premiums due to the increase in policies as well. This then improves the overall loss ratio by increasing overall revenue and also by retaining some of your best customers. So now I'm going to pass this over to Steve. All right, Steve, you have control.
All right, thank you. Just move this ahead. All right, so let's talk about how telematics can be leveraged in the crash and the claims area. This is a relatively new development for North America, while in Europe, the value has been realized over many years now. So being able to connect a car with sensors allows us to collect really rich information if the car is involved in an adverse event. So if there's a crash, we are able to immediately identify information about that crash, where it might have occurred, how severe it might have been, could there be the possibility of injury, etc. And so using that data, we are able to present information to insurance companies that can help manage their claim process more effectively. In a sense, they may be able to start their claims process quicker. Using actual factual information, they may be able to prevent claims fraud. Just the fact that you've got now factual information, you may be able to reduce the frequency of claims, and because of the data, reduce the severity of the claims as well. So there's a lot of benefits that are to be realized in the claims arena due to telematics information. Most importantly, you can improve the customer experience because with all of this information, you will be able to settle claims quickly and reimburse and get the customer back to their original state. Let's look at the comparison between a traditional claims process versus a telematics-driven process. In the traditional process, the policyholder is the person who will probably initiate the claim notice of loss. informing the insurance company that he's been involved in an event. With the telematics-driven program, you will get information about the accident in almost real time and can consequently have a proactive initiation of the claims process, reaching out to the policyholder to find out if he's actually involved in a crash, and based on the severity of the crash, send the appropriate emergency services to the site of the location of the accident. So it could be an ambulance, a tow truck, the police, etc. In the traditional way, the time for notification could take days, whereas in the telematics world, it's in near real time. With the data that we collect with the telematics program, you can reconstruct what might have occurred during that accident in near real time as well. Using the information, a company like ours is able to produce what we call a crash dossier. This is a document that provides all the information about the event to the insurance company. It will allow the validation of the event based on the location, the type of impact that might have occurred, the location of the impact, the severity of the impact. If you look at the image on the right side, you can see some of the great detail that is presented in the report. That's actually showing the force of the impact in the various directions on that car. And then the little map next door will show the location where the impact might have occurred. And at the bottom, you can see two sliding bars which show you the likelihood of there being damage of significance to the vehicle, as well as the likelihood of a bodily injury to the passenger based on the impact. So using this, you're able to determine who might be at fault for the accident. For example, if the impact occurs at the front of the vehicle, it's likely the policyholder. If the impact occurs at the rear of the vehicle, it might be another driver that has caused this event. Now let us look at the impact of telematics on claims settlement. So based on a study that was conducted in the UK, where a traditional approach to settling claims was examined, from the time of crash notification to the creation of documents, to getting the information from the subject matter experts, and then finally settling and paying the claim and closing it, let's say it took an approximate of 8 days. When partners of Octo's were asked to respond to a survey on how their claim process evolved, they were able to demonstrate that it took less than 15% of the total number of days in the traditional process to close the claim. And this is because they were able to get real-time notification of that claim. Using the data at hand, they could immediately reconstruct what was going on with that accident, assess fault, assess damage, and make settlement and pay the claim really quickly. And so just that benefit of closing a claim within 50% of the time of a traditional company gave great benefits to the insurance companies. Now let's go back to our loss ratio paradigm to understand how telematics data can improve the loss ratio. So with the access to the information at hand, you can definitely remove fraudulent claims, thereby reducing the number of claims or claim frequency. Also using the data, you can quickly understand how severe the impact might be, how severe the claim could be, what damages might have occurred, what kind of injuries may have occurred, and therefore allow you to manage the average cost of the claim, reducing that. And so therefore, just by reducing the number of claims and the average cost, you would be able to reduce claim costs overall, thereby positively impacting the loss ratio. And given that the loss ratio is a significant part of the combined ratio of an insurance company, any movement on that front will result in greater profitability for the insurance company. Now I'll hand it over to John to kind of wrap up.
Thanks,
John?
Stephen. I appreciate it. So each of these types of programs, usage-based insurance, policyholder services, and crash and claims, can have an impact on the profitability of the auto product. And really, when taken together, the benefits are even more substantial. When it comes to product design, our focus is to reduce cost and expense while increasing revenue through sales. We'll show you later how the combination of these two dynamics add up to more than the sum of the individual parts. In terms of cost reduction, we see claims management advantages with immediate notification of crash. Immediate notification of a crash can yield more accurate evaluations of what actually occurred and improve efficiency in claim settlement. Further, we know from our partners that we can reduce the actual cycle time of a claim considerably, which allows for savings. Just anecdotally speaking, imagine, from a conservative perspective, if you could reduce claim resolution time by, say, 5 days. Assuming the rental car reimbursement average cost of $20, an insurer could reduce rental car expenses by $100 per claim. We also know improved driving behavior is a logical benefit. Putting drivers in touch with how their driving affects the price they are paying will improve driving safety. And as a consequence, this will reduce claim severity and frequency. Our partners have told us that early term loss ratios for telematics customers outperform those without telematics. We have also seen substantially improved results in repair management through insurers maintaining better control of the repair and utilizing their preferred networks. From a perspective of revenue generation, telematics adoption can provide a platform for a much improved targeted customer acquisition and segmentation play across the portfolio, a true opportunity to attract and retain the most profitable customers. Loyalty can also be improved with better value propositions through crash and accident management and response. Telematics can provide an opportunity to offer a differentiated product and cross-sell opportunities in the form of value-added services. And lastly, the customer interface opens up a whole new world of customer engagement. The use of smartphones, web portals, and emails allows insurers the ability to talk to customers more than once or twice per year. With all these factors combining to deliver loss ratio improvement. And as we all know, an insurance policy is merely selling a promise and some peace of mind to a policyholder. Telematics has a real role to play in taking the consumer value proposition to the next level. The opportunity for a positive intervention at a time when the customer may need assistance transforms the dialogue from a once or twice per year request for more money to a broader relationship based on trust, loyalty, and service. Insurance telematics is a true win-win for both insurers and policyholders alike. Insurers benefit from up to 18% improved combined ratio, more accurate risk pricing that reflects the true driver risk profiles, more efficient claims processes with lower average costs and reduced fraud, more frequent and better quality interactions with policyholders, and a broad suite of telematic services that enhances the overall customer experience. Policyholders benefit also from deep premium discounts of up to 40% with more personalized pricing, strong incentives to drive more safely to earn lower premiums, significant time savings and certainty in the claims process, and access to value-added services such as stolen vehicle recovery, e-call, and roadside assistance. So all of this is very hypothetical, and it seems very airy and beautiful conceptually. However, we wanted to show a true representation of these concepts in action. So we'd like to share a case study with a major European insurer. Okta rolled out a fully integrated insurance telematics program with a major European insurer over a 4-year period, which resulted in 15.9% reduction in claims frequency, a 2.6 decrease in time spent processing a claim, a 3.1% increase in average premium, and a 12.5 percentage point improvement in loss ratio. The 12.5 percentage point improvement in loss ratio resulted from an aggressive telematics adoption program. During year 1, the insurer worked with us and expended significant effort to learn from the new telematics data, developing a deep understanding of the policyholder's driving behavior, risk events, and crashes. Year 2 was largely focused on proactively addressing and reducing costs associated with fraud. The company integrated telematics crash data into their internal systems in Year 3, allowing the claims management team to more holistically manage a claim and operationalize the claim. Finally, Octo worked with the company to train key stakeholders such as agents, repair networks, body shops, and regional teams, and ensured they maximize their benefit from telematics. And with that wraps up our presentation for today.
Great.
And want to thank everybody for joining us, and we're happy to take a few questions that the audience may have at this time.
Thanks, John. Wow, great stuff, Steve and John. So we've got some questions here from our listeners. Here's one question. And can telematics assist in determining at-fault drivers and accidents? And can info from telematics influence information on policy reports? So maybe, Steve, you can jump in on that since that was your presentation. And then, John, I'm sure you might have some comments on that sort of double-edged sword that question presents.
So this is Stephen. Let me respond to the question about identifying at fault. Based on the sensors in the vehicle, we can actually track where the impact has occurred on the vehicle and the direction of that impact. So for example, if you are struck in the rear of a car, then the sensors will detect the acceleration, that's the forward motion, and will detect that the direction of the impact is from the rear of the vehicle. And we can share that with the insurance company to let them know that it truly wasn't the fault of their policyholder driver, but rather the vehicle behind that struck the insured vehicle. Similarly, if policyholder's vehicle is the cause for the impact, then you will see the direction of motion of the vehicle and the resulting impact. So yes, we can identify which vehicle is at fault.
Okay, any comments to that, John?
No, Stephen said it perfectly.
Okay, so let's move to another question. Until a provider has all policyholders on usage-based insurance, I suppose they will have at least 2 pricing platforms on track. You want to comment on that, John?
Yeah, sure. So I can tell you that is correct. So what we have found is there are, and just to kind of talk about the industry at a broader level or a higher level, usage-based insurance are optional programs. There aren't any top 10 providers or even top 25 or top 50 providers that are mandating usage-based insurance as an auto product. That said, it is all optional. So inherent to having two independent products, it's true, you will have running concurrently your usage-based insurance product and also your non-usage-based insurance product, which in the early stages is kind of neat because it gives you an opportunity to do true A/B comparison between telematics and non-telematics policies. Great question.
Thank you. Okay, so another question we have here is, and this is a challenging question. I'll probably throw it to you, John. But since we don't have access directly to what all carriers are doing internally, one of our listeners has asked, what insurer has the largest number of UBI users?
Easy question, actually, because this information is all public. Based on the information that's available, we know that Progressive Insurance, their Snapshot program, has the most users in terms of total vehicles in force or PIF. And just to kind of put some numbers to this. Now these are numbers from, I believe it was 2016 or maybe even 2015. I think it was 2016, excuse me. Progressive has attributed $2.2 or $2.3 billion worth of their private passenger auto direct written premium to Snapshot. To put this into context for folks, if Snapshot was its own product, Snapshot would be a top 10 private passenger auto company here in the United States. So it's some pretty big, it's a pretty big number there with them.
Good, thank you, John. So next question, I'll let both of you take a shot at this. How open are customers to releasing data to insurers in exchange for paying less? For example, insurer tracking location of vehicle or crash data in real time. John, maybe you could talk a little bit from the usage base, and then maybe Steve could talk a little bit from the crash side.
Sure. So I think one thing we like to say, and when I work with new customers, this is one of the very first things I always say to them is that not everybody's going to put some sort of technology into their car or surrender data to an insurance company for usage-based insurance. There's a percentage of people who will not do this. Just it doesn't matter how big of a discount you're going to give them or what kind of incentive you're going to give them. That said, the vast majority of people will. In fact, industry analysts have said that about 50% of people who are offered would take a usage-based insurance product, and in fact, they believe that those numbers could even be higher, probably closer to 60 or 65%, when explained properly and shown the benefit to the policyholder.
And clear to the second part of your question, which was how willing were they to share data in real time, I would tell you that we are seeing several of the top 10 insurance carriers in the United States from a personal lines perspective beginning to explore this arena. Several of our partners are already in this space trying to understand the data that can be collected during crashes and how they will use it to benefit their policyholders. And so I would say that the insurers' focuses are certainly shifted from the acquisition of customers now into better satisfying their policyholders.
Great, thank you guys. The next question I think I'll field myself, and you guys can jump in. The next question is simple. Are the value-added services contingent on an OBD to plug-in device? Well, you know, engagement is engagement. So any engagement is better than no engagement. Any increased engagement is better than no engagement. So being able to have something on an app engage the end consumer more frequently is a good thing. However, when you add a dongle, you get exponential results because you're connected to the vehicle. You can read a lot more information. There's a tremendous amount more information for you to be able to then step up the interaction capabilities as was shown on a couple of the earlier slides. And then, of course, the future, too, I think just begs the question about where is the auto manufacturers and playing in this, and how does that, affect the OBD plug-in device going forward. So, there is a future there. We work with the OEs and our auto manufacturers, and we know they have some intentions of moving that direction, but it does play somewhat secondary to the desire to have autonomous and safety features in the vehicle. So I expect that the progress that the auto manufacturers will make in having that information available to the insurance carriers and consumers and so forth is always going to be lagging behind the aftermarket OBD plugins. John, Steve, I don't know if you want to add anything.
I was actually going to say that so the idea is, and I'll just tell you one of the ways that I read this. It says value-added services contingent on an OBD2 plug-in device. It kind of begs a different question, which is, is the OBD2 solution the only solution? And of course, the answer to that is no. I know that we have a very strong philosophy at Octo that the sensors, every sensor has a unique place and a unique position. And depending on the sensor that you use, you will either have, as Cletus was saying, a more robust data set or a more simplified data set. So just from, my days of product development, it's understanding what you're trying to accomplish out there and then saying, all right, once I decide what I'm trying to do as a business and how I'm going to do usage-based insurance and how I'm going to figure this all out, it comes down to the point of then saying, all right, working with somebody that can help you kind of decide what solution might be best. Yeah. Stephen, do you have anything else?
I was going to talk about, a portfolio game where you can use different types of technology to offer different services at different price points and for different levels of risk. So you may choose to collect simpler data for the safest drivers and have a most efficient program, and maybe get, a much more robust data set for drivers that you perceive may be, more risky, and therefore use that to kind of make a program that's more effective.
Great, thank you guys. The next question is very interesting. When the world is fully autonomous vehicles, or the market is saturated with fully autonomous vehicles, how will telematics play in that space? It's a very interesting question, and I might even want to change it a little bit for the panel, because to recycle through the car park, is 11 to 13 years or so, and then autonomous vehicles being hitting the marketplace in 4 years or so. So we could be looking at 20 years before we get to this point, and there's a lot of speculation and a lot of evolution that's going to happen between them. But one question is also interesting. In the meantime, how will telematics influence the mix of a world where we have vehicles driven by human beings and vehicles that are fully autonomous driven by computers? Because we can see that they act quite differently, where the human being has expectations of what's happening around them, and then the computer reads and does things very literally and according to their programs. So I might like to add that twist over to sort of the, what's going to happen in the transition period. And of course, if anyone on the panel has some speculations on the future of a fully autonomous marketplace, feel free.
Yeah, I actually, I've thought a lot about autonomy, and and from a telematics perspective, it's interesting, right? So a vehicle, regardless of how it is transported from point A to point B, will still involve people, right? Unless we're talking about, transporting, services or assets or something. But, if I want to go visit my grandmother, I'm going to get in some sort of vehicle, and I'm going to be transported there either by me driving or by, the vehicle taking me there. I think telematics is going to play in it actually in a different sort of way than how we're thinking about it today. And I kind of use the analogy of an airline, right, or an airplane. I know that the three guys on this phone travel quite a bit for their job. And I had the fortunate chance to sit next to an airline pilot on one of my most recent flights, and I said to him, I was like, how much do you guys really do up there as far as like actually flying the plane? And the response that he gave me was very, very little. And I said, oh, okay, and of course we're talking commercial airlines here, not private airlines, but and I said to him, well, what is your primary focus? What is your job? What are you supposed to do? He's like, well, basically, I'm there in case something happens, right? I'm there to make sure that the plane can land safely if there's an accident, or if, the computer blows up, or any number of things can happen. The thing that we didn't contemplate happens. And really, from the perspective of telematics, if you think about humans and driving behavior is something that is cultivated through experience, right? And as we go into an autonomous world, I think that there's still going to be a place for this with regards to humans, because we're all going to be out of practice, right? And really being able to understand who's driving safely in those instances, which may be few and far between, is still going to provide an opportunity to have some telematics within the autonomous space. So just something to kind of think about.
Okay, great.
The other thing I would add is telematics data can be sourced from any type of sensor. It doesn't have to be a third-party device introduced in the car. The cars themselves will have all of these sensors embedded in them, because that's how they will, support the autonomous capability. And so even when vehicles are fully autonomous, you may not have personal auto liability, but certainly there will be commercial auto liability. And the data that can be collected off these autonomous vehicles will probably determine, how liability is apportioned, what software failed, which vehicle struck which vehicle first. So I still think telematics data will be playing a role in determining some of that, even though individuals are not driving the vehicles.
Yeah, that's a good point, Steve, because still there'll be liability and insurance issues no matter who's behind the vehicle, and how that vehicle is performing and so forth can play yet another role.
Absolutely.
Okay, good. Okay, so let's go to the next question. So the question is, who is responsible for maintaining the sensors on the vehicle and gathering the data? And what is the expected cost of maintaining such sensors? I'd like to just take a moment and break that question up a little bit, because Today there's two sources of, should we say, sensor data. One is specifically the vehicle, and then there's a device that might be plugged into the vehicle, or a smartphone, or tags or other capabilities that provide a whole bunch of sensors around speed and tilt and vehicle and location, GPS, all that sort of good stuff. Then the specific data that comes off the vehicle, typically today it's read off the OBD port or off what we call the CAN bus, which is then tied to a bunch of different sensors called PIDs. And so that data that is specifically controlled, or that data is specifically controlled by the auto manufacturers. And the aftermarket and pretty much anybody who works on those vehicles or uses that data has to go to certain sources to understand what that data means and what is available on any specific make, model, or year. And the cost in maintaining those cost is not so much in the sensors. The cost for a telematics service provider like Octo is in getting access to the data sources to be able to take that information and also to understand what vehicles can provide that information moving forward. Steve, do you want to add to that particular comments and questions?
Just a minute. Right. So, and I think, depending on the type of business model that's pursued by the telematics service provider, there could be different, outcomes. For example, somebody that offers a turnkey solution, which includes the device and the services and everything, such as Octo, then all of the device maintenance and everything is managed by Octo, and in the event of the sensors having a failure or something like that, the device just gets replaced by Octo at no cost to the insurance company. However, there are other insurance companies that have models where they own the devices as an asset, and so in case the devices malfunction and the sensors go down, then obviously they would be responsible. So I think there are different types of models for running telematics programs, and some are beneficial to the insurance company and some may not.
Thank you, Steve. John, any comments?
No, I think you guys covered it pretty well. I can tell you that, what you guys said was pretty much what I was thinking as well. So.
All right, good. Okay, so the next question, it's a business model question. So, John, I'm probably going to give you first crack at this, but so how does the insured pay, and is there a deposit premium associated with that?
Yeah, so once again, this is a true business model question, and it really depends on the insurance company and how they're doing this. I can tell you that most of the insurance companies that are out there are not charging customers for the technology. Okay, the benefit is far greater for the insurance company to eat the cost of this than it would be to recoup the cost from the policyholder. And really, charging a customer a cost for a telematics device or a subscription can be a bit of a detriment, or a barrier to entry. That said, with value-added services and whatnot, there is an opportunity there, but that's, I'm talking a little bit about a little bit more on the usage-based insurance side. So typically, though, the insurer does not pay. Oftentimes what will happen is, in the event that the customer does not return the device, an insurer may charge the customer for a lost device fee. But other than that, it's typically very much a pass-through type of service provided to the customer.
And now that's in the model where we talk about usage-based insurance. In a commercial model, for example, where you're looking at a commercial fleet, in those cases, often they will pass that cost off to the fleet owner themselves, especially when the fleet owner is not someone that they want to necessarily reinsure. So there can be variations on that, and when you start to add value-added services, say roadside assistance or crash notification and providing services, emergency services on top of that, those value-added services become opportunities where you could add riders or charge for those services moving forward. Okay, well, I have to say, we've been getting some fabulous questions. This next one is good, too. It's another around the business model. So because insurers don't exclusively use UBI, will they be able to gain the savings and price benefits since they have to maintain two pricing systems? John, you want to take a crack at that too, since you're on the business model role?
Yeah, sure. So the question, I think it's a question of, you know, it's inefficient to run two models. I mean, that's kind of what I'm hearing here, right? You know, and really what we have found, and if you take a look at the industry and the growth that we've seen, obviously it is working, right? You know, ideally, to have one solid model where you're doing all usage-based insurance would probably be the best. But as we had said, it's one of these things where folks are not necessarily, not all folks are going to do this, so we're going to still have to offer these traditional private passenger auto policies where we have there. But that said, most insurance companies, and this is something you can take a look at, you know, if you take a look at some of the filings that are out there, they're using the traditional class plan as the base rates for the policy, and then adding on the usage-based insurance discounts on top of this based upon the performance to reduce the policy. So you're still using the same well, the base rates really in the same class plan. However, you're just adding on that usage-based insurance to the top of it to provide those discounts to those select customers.
Great, thank you, John. Steve, do you want to add anything?
No, I would echo what John said. You know, for those insurance carriers that leverage multivariate pricing plans, you know, they are able to add in the telematics variable and allow it to play with other variables as well. So in a sense, they're not really supporting two different pricing models. They just have the one where the telematics variable is an additional variable included in on the pricing.
Yes, and actually just one other thought on that too, Steve, and I know we've talked about this over coffee sometimes, but a lot of insurance companies, and just to be candid here, you know, and once again, this is all information that's available out there. You know, not all insurance companies are saying, all right, you have a $1,500 premium, you got a 10% discount, I'm taking, you know, $150 off the top. You know, they are selecting coverages. They are being strategic in the types of discounts or where those discounts are being placed. You know, the customer is still getting the benefit from it, but, you know, to address possible off-balance issues and, you know, some of the other challenges that you would have there, they are being strategic about how they're doing that. So, yeah.
Great, thank you, guys. This next question, it's great. By the way, people are really thinking through some of the things we're talking about, and it's great to see the questions evolving as we're going forward. This next question is about commercial, and the question comes in this form. Telematics would be an ideal risk pricing control factor for commercial fleets. Is it being used for commercial vehicles more or less than on personally owned vehicles? So this is a great question because we consider this an emerging market. It's growing very, very rapidly. Traditionally, large commercial fleets have had a variety of products offered to them to help manage their fleets and control costs as well as be safer drivers. But the artisan fleet, which makes up actually the majority of fleets in America, has been underserved. And we know that the combined ratio is suffering greatly in that particular segment. So you're absolutely right. It is a great risk pricing control factor. It's a huge opportunity also to add value into the specific sort of artisan, small mom and pop fleets that, like I said, are definitely underserved out there in terms of being able to manage their assets and going forward. This is a great question, so I want to make sure I open this up to Steve and John because I know both of them have quite a bit to say about these particular things. Steve, why don't we start with you?
So certainly the adoption of telematics in commercial fleets, you know, has occurred for many years just because of, you know, things like fleet logistics and all of that. They saw the value of telematics and began to use it for that purpose. Where they haven't really made a big push is on the insurance side, being able to demonstrate that their fleets might be safer. And that is the area of innovation that we're seeing now. And that's particularly creeping down away from the large fleets into the small and the medium-sized fleets because of the telematics solutions which are available today that are cost-effective. They can now get the benefits of both, get their fleets to become more operationally effective, as well as show the ability to be a safer fleet and therefore get better insurance pricing. So we're definitely seeing strong interest in that area, as evidenced by interest in our fleet.
John, any comments? All right, John, you might be on mute.
Yep. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I was actually going to. I did have my phone on mute. My apologies. I was going to say that the one thing is, and if you talk to most commercial product managers, if you're looking at, commercial lines in aggregate, as you were saying, Cletus, the majority, and I think the numbers between 70 and 80% of the fleets out there are going to be those smaller fleets, right? They're going to be basically something that looks more like a private passenger auto product than a commercial product with regards to what they're doing. In fact, the largest commercial company out there right now is Progressive, and we know that their size is somewhere in the neighborhood of around 2 or so, right? So it's interesting to see how this is coming around, and the insurers are definitely seeing the value of being able to provide fleet services to those smaller fleets. And when I say smaller fleets, not just in terms of size, but also in terms of GVWR. If I've got a pickup truck used for landscaping or a delivery van, this is really the sweet spot that we found, and insurers are really getting excited about using this for that market.
Great, thank you, John. We only have 4 minutes left, and there's still a bunch of questions, and I wish we could get to all of these. One of these is, I'm just going to make a comment, is telematics programs being used for other lines of insurance besides auto insurance? The simple answer is absolutely yes. I think it's a whole nother session when we talk about the Internet of Things, how we're doing home monitoring for claims, how we're using it in ride sharing and other capabilities. So that question itself, I think, could deserve a full hour of discussion. But that being said, on behalf of the CPCU Society, I'd really like to thank Steve and John for both your excellent presentations and thoughtful consideration to the questions that have been put out there. I'd also like to thank all of the attendees for joining us this afternoon and the high level of participation and the fabulous questions that we received. It's a lot of fun to see that level of engagement for an industry and field that is very passionate to myself. The webinar recording will be emailed to all registrants of the live webinar within the next 24 hours. And so look for that email and share that with your colleagues. I hope you found that there was a lot of really good information here. And this concludes today's webinar. Thank you and have a great afternoon.